Welcome, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for the District 7 School Board Candidate Forum. We'll be getting started shortly. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. We'll be getting started in just a moment. All right, good evening, everyone, and thanks to those tuning in live here on Zoom and Facebook. I want to welcome you to the District 7 School Board Candidate Forum. We appreciate you so much for spending your evening with us and for demonstrating your commitment to public education and to our city. My name is Rachel Tutwiler Fortune, and I am the president of the Jacksonville Public Education Fund. JPEF is an independent nonprofit that's working to close the opportunity gap here in Duval County by connecting education leaders with research-based best practices. I'm joined by my journalist co-moderator tonight, Melissa Ross. Melissa is the host of the call-in news show First Coast Connect, which airs every weekday at 9 a.m. on WJCT 89.9. And she also co-hosts the weekly Florida Roundup, which airs on Fridays on NPR stations across the state. Melissa has won 4 regional Emmys for news and feature reporting. You can follow her on Twitter at Melissa N. Jax. Melissa, thank you so much for co-moderating with me tonight and for all of your coverage of education issues in our community.
Rachel, it's great to be with you and to be part of this evening's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Our candidates for this evening are Lori Hershey and Matt Schellenberg, who you will be hearing from shortly. Another candidate in this race, John Turner, was invited to join us tonight, but he did not choose to participate. As a reminder, District 7 represents schools in Mandarin. You can see a map of this district here. It's also available on our website at jaxpef.org/schoolboard. Again, I would like to share our ground rules for this evening. We'll start with brief introductions. The candidates will each have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and we'll do that in alphabetical order. Then we'll transition to the questions portion of the evening. We will alternate the order of respondents so that each candidate has the same opportunity to be first to answer. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question and 30 seconds for clarification if they are mentioned by another candidate. To keep us on track this evening, my colleague Myra will show a warning card when you have 15 seconds of your time left, and she'll show you another warning card when it's your time to wrap up. At that point, please end your sentence. If a candidate exceeds their time, we'll turn off their microphone. In order to get to as many questions as possible and to be fair to other candidates, we ask you to each keep in mind those time limits. Our questions have been sourced in collaboration between our JPEF staff and our journalist moderators, with some additional questions coming from our organizational partners. We will take time to answer questions as well from those of you who are tuning in live tonight. So please submit your questions in the chat function on Zoom or in the comment section on Facebook. We'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible, but please know we may not be able to get to all of the questions. At the end of the forum, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make closing remarks. Some very important topics on the agenda this evening include school reopening and COVID-19, the role of the school board, the half penny for public schools, equity in the Black Lives Matter movement, teacher retention, and parent and caregiver engagement. I want to remind you all as well of some important election information before we begin. The primary election will be held Tuesday, August the 18th, with early voting from August the 3rd through the 16th. You still have time to sign up for a mail ballot if you wish to. You can do this at duvalelections.com up to 10 days before the election. If no school board candidate receives more than 50% of the vote during the primary, then there will be a runoff between the top 2 candidates in November. And the general election will be held November the 3rd with early voting from October 19th through November the 1st. We also want to let you know that you'll be voting in the general election on the half penny for public schools, which would fund school building upgrades across the county. We will be having a community mobilization call on July 23rd at 6 p.m. to share more information. You can sign up at jackspef.org/vote. Before we dive in, I just want to take a moment to thank the candidates for participating this evening. School board elections provide the community with a very important opportunity to engage with the public education system, and we're grateful to the candidates for taking the time tonight to speak directly to the voters and for their interest in public service. I also want to sincerely thank Melissa Ross, our journalist co-moderator for the evening. We're really grateful to you, Melissa, and we're also grateful to Channel 4 for streaming this program on their website. After the event, you can find the recording on our Facebook page and at jackspef.org/school board. And with that, we'll get started with introductions, starting with Lori Hershey and then Matt Schellenberg. Please introduce yourself in 2 minutes or less.
Hi, I'm Lori Hershey, a Jacksonville resident by birth and by choice. Representing you on the school board for the past 4 years has been an honor. 4 years ago, our school district was 30 points away from becoming an A district. Today, we are less than half a percentage point, and our graduation rates are the highest it's ever been. There's still work to be done. We need to ensure that all students have the resources they need in order to be successful. We need to continue to work to improve and expand our career technical education. And that is why I worked hard to facilitate a partnership between the school district and Jacksport. Finally, we need to continue the work that's been begun a long time ago on improving literacy and reading. While we've gotten some national recognition for improvement in reading, we still have work to do. And I'm asking you today for your vote on August 18th.
Thanks, Lori. Matt?
Yeah, there. Thank you very much. Good evening, community members, families, parents, educators, and JPEF host. I am Matt Schellenberg, and I've been living in Jacksonville for since 1962. And I believe that every child deserves an opportunity to learn, thrive in a safe, secure, supportive environment that helps guide his or her future in realizing its fullest potential. My focus is on child-centered learning and skill building, fiscal transparency and accountability, educator support, development, innovation, and in career workforce training. Because of that, I am running. I've been having a business. I've worked in Jacksonville for over 50 years. I've owned a business for 29 years, going on 30 years. I was on the city council for 8 years, got reelected in that community the first time in 19 years. I engaged myself with what was going on in those communities. I would have town hall meetings almost every other month, and that doesn't include the neighborhood meetings, the church meetings, the synagogue meetings, and just people just wanted to come and talk to me in Publix to find out how Jacksonville, Mandarin, and we can all improve. And part of that is the school system. my business, I met people from all over the world and in the United States that moved here for jobs. But for the last 20 years, they all been moving to St. Johns County. We need to stop this. And the reason we have to stop that is we need to put ourselves and compete against our neighborhood counties for the benefit of all students and make sure that they get the quality of education to be successful in life going forward. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for those introductory remarks. We'll now turn to our questions, and I will hand it over to you, Melissa, for the first one.
All right, thank you, Rachel. And we will start with the issue on everyone's minds. Reopening schools next month amid rising cases of COVID-19 in Duval County. Now, yesterday, Duval School Superintendent Diana Green presented a final version of the district's back-to-school plan with some modifications like a mask requirement and a full-time Duval homeroom option for all grade levels. And there have been tweaks and changes right up until we met tonight. Plans are in place for each grade level as well to have an in-person schooling option with a range from 5 days per week to 2, depending on the grade. We'll start with Matt. Do you agree or disagree with the new version of Duval School's back-to-school plan? What do you suggest be done differently if you were on the school board?
Matt, it looks like you're on mute.
I took the time to answer the question. I think that we need to have a thoughtful conversation. I think that all schools, every grade should be open 5 days a week. Now, I heard that Dr. Green said that the movement of buses and things like that, all those can be logically, logistically worked out. Every child, every parent has the right to send their child to school 5 days a week. Do you realize that 80% of the people that were laid off and are still basically laid off made less than $40,000 a year? How are they going to have a child home for 2 days, be at school for 2 days, and have multiple children with different schedules? It just doesn't work. So I believe that the schools should be open up, and the parents or the guardian or grandparents should have the right to decide if they're going to be homeschooled or not. And I don't agree with the Duval County Union that's saying only teachers that have 3 years experience can do home school. Thank you.
Okay, Lori Hershey.
So my view is obviously just different, as I spent 3 hours in that meeting today. The big part of the conversation is the fact that we continue to see COVID rates in Jacksonville increase. And as soon as, I think it was the end of June, there was an article that came out that put Duval County as number 3 in the country at that particular time for our increase in COVID. So it's not just a question about education, it's a question also about health safety. So the conversation today that took place and the pivot, if you will, that happened was to look at delaying the start of school by 2 weeks. This delay would provide 2 opportunities. One, to give professional development for teachers, and also to allow a deep cleaning for schools. And I see my time is up, but hopefully you can check that meeting and see what that conversation was.
Okay. Thank you both for those responses. Rachel.
Thanks, Melissa. Now, some of the school board's most important constituents are parents. Would love to hear each of you speak to how you would help reach families of students who have dropped off the radar since schools closed this spring, families who speak a language other than English, those living in poverty, who are homeless, grandparents. Lori, we'll start with you for this one.
Okay, there I go. You know, it's interesting when I first got on the board and I was visiting schools, I was very surprised to learn that every school in my district has over 20 languages represented, which was just so unique from, I think, many people's perception of Mandarin. I think people would be surprised too to learn that Mandarin does have a homelessness issue with students. But what I will tell you in District 7 is that it's not always evident. You kind of find out late sometimes in talking to parents. People don't like to advertise that or promote that. What I will tell you is the school district has some great departments that work specifically with students who are homeless. And for me, if you call me, I'm going to call you back. If you email me, I'm going to respond. And again, it's just that authenticity and being in person and responding to people when you see them in the community.
Thank you, Lori. Matt?
You know, I was a couple things. I was on the honor rolls, and I'm going to touch on that in just a second. But I would leverage all our community partners in the aid of that outreach: churches, community centers, housing associations, critical family resources, such as food distribution. These families are getting food. Why shouldn't be contacting them? How about the KHA, Kids Hope Alliance? They're in contact with all these people. And then the aftercare, we have school programs. But let me touch base on the honor rolls. I was there at in the inception. Those are the yellow shirts that show up at all the Jaguar games, or most of them. And what we found is that we would give them, each of them had to meet a certain criteria, reading a book or doing something in the community. But later, when we tried to contact them to bring them to the game, we lost them. This was so discouraging. They had accomplished their goal, but we couldn't find them so they could go to the Jaguar game, get a meal, and enjoy something they would never have been able to do. Thank you.
Thank you both. We are living through a transformational time right now with the Black Lives Matter movement. Students are expressing themselves forcefully on issues like racism and equality and social justice. What role do you think our public schools can play in creating that place for students to engage in conversations about race as part of the educational experience? Matt.
Okay, I'm already on. Our public schools must lead important dialogue, create and emphasize civility and inclusivity to integrate civic engagement, civic discourse, and practices across the curriculum. But I might add, I've been a letter writer to the editor before I got elected in 2011. And I recently wrote a letter to the editor, and it was published. And it basically said, I'm not too familiar, I'm not engaged with the actual organization of Black Lives Matter. But here in Duval County for 50 years, we have neglected a certain part of the population. And it's just not 7, 8, 9, and 10, but there's areas that Scott Wilson had that clearly are neglected. You could see in the mayor's budget, he has allocated $100 million finally to engage that community, to bring quality of life issues. And part of that is equal education and benefit for all citizens in Jacksonville.
Lori.
Sorry, I'm muting. It's difficult sometimes. So what I will tell you is I think when you think about equity, if you look at the plan for the half-penny sales tax, and I realize we're not there yet, but that is an example. We have that disparity because of segregation in our city. And what I can tell you is that having been in schools that have been rebuilt and seen neighborhoods revitalized, it changes something. It gives a different energy. And I think that it's so important for students to have the opportunity to feel good about where they go to school. Just a couple of years ago, at the request of students, the school district has added curriculum specific for African American studies in schools. And I believe through talking with principals, the conversation is going to come through specific schools and guided through Dr. Green.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. Well, we also know that we have made significant progress in Duval County, but we do still have persistent disparities by race in our schools, including along the lines of student discipline, access to gifted and advanced courses, and educational outcomes. We'll be eager to hear both of you share about what you think DCPS has done well here and what remains to be done. And for this one, we will start with you, Lori.
So under Dr. Vidi's leadership, access to gifted programs and courses were expanded, and it continued to expand under Dr. Willis. You saw accelerated learning programs put in schools specifically to reach a diverse population of students. When I toured Maddie V, it's obvious the disparity when you mention discipline. And That is something that Dr. Green has worked really hard on. Dr. Vitti had introduced restorative justice practices, which have been good. And this year was the first year that I've been on the board that we did not have a meeting to expel one student. So I think our restorative practices are working. Our effort to address the whole child and address the root of the problem and not just the behavior has been something our superintendents over the past few years have done well.
Thank you, Lori. Matt, when you think about sort of persistent disparities by race, what do you think we've done well, and what do you think we still need to do?
A couple things. Again, I write these things down because they're important for me, and I appreciate the questions. I think our schools need more training on positive behavior modification. Social emotional competency, mentoring programs like the 1,000 role models and Big Brothers, Big Sisters, parent, family, teacher engagement and partnerships. Collaboration and engagement. All those are an integral part of doing this. And although the question is later, in my experience when I was tutoring up in the Northwest Quadrant, man, I can tell you, it doesn't make any difference. If you're teaching them reading or math, as long as you care for them and love them, they are all in. And the disparity I never saw in any child that I was tutoring during this process. And you know what? That goes with athletes too. Everybody should be treated equally, and everybody's been given different talents, and those talents should be explored and for the benefit of the child. Thank you.
All right, next question. This will begin on the same theme. How will you prioritize anti-racism and implicit bias education for yourself and in your position on the school board? How will you incorporate this necessary education into school staff, students, families, and curriculum? Let's begin with Matt.
I always believe actions speak louder than words. And if the student senses a conflict, then it goes terribly. So we need to do adoption of the national recognized diversity and inclusivity training for all current and future staff, administrators, teachers, and families, as well as students. Adding classes to Parent Academy and anything that will benefit the collaboration of bringing people together to know that we're all the same. We need to treat everybody equally, and education, this is one of the areas you do. Actions speak louder than words. Thank you.
And Lori.
So what I will tell you first for myself, I am a certified board member, and the reason that's significant is because only 28% of Florida school board members are certified board members, which means I have participated in professional development, and I've taken that very seriously. A couple of years ago, Chairman Jones and I attended a conference, and at that conference the speaker was absolutely phenomenal, and we kept saying we need to bring him to Jacksonville, and he made it very clear that even those of us who thought we didn't have any bias, he helped us find it. And he was supposed to come last year and speak. I had spoken with some community partners who were going to help get him here. Unfortunately, there was a conflict, but bringing someone like that to Jacksonville for our teachers is something that Chairman Jones and I had been committed to with this particular speaker. He's out of Atlanta. When it comes to, you said for ourselves and then for the school board, you know, I just think that it's so important to remember that people are people, and we have to treat people the way we want to be treated. I mean, it's really that, it can be that simple, but what happens and what I learned through this particular exercise that we did.
Awesome, thank you, Lori. I think we have to pivot to the next question.
Okay.
What's your opinion on the renaming of the 6 schools in Duval County currently named after Confederate soldiers? And are there other school names that you think should be readdressed? Laura, we'll start with you for this one.
So I would like to say that I believe I'm the only board member right now who has a spouse who graduated from Robert E. Lee, and his mother and grandmother did too. So for me, I've got skin in the game on this issue. I do believe, you know, we had the community come to the school board with 10,000 signatures. pushing the name changes of Confederate soldiers in our city. And if you look really close, some of the schools, not Robert E. Lee, but some of the schools that were named for Confederate soldiers were done during the desegregation process. That is something that I think is a conversation our community really, really needs to have. Most people don't understand that it is a long process. It requires community engagement. It requires alumni input. And I would remind everyone that the board does have policies not to name a school after a person living or who has passed. I'm not saying that if somebody came up with a name, we couldn't revisit that. But I think I am very proud of the current school board for daring to lead. And
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Matt, what's your opinion on the renaming of the schools in Duval County currently named after Confederate leaders?
I think what I recognized when Forest High School, I guess 5 or 6 years ago, I had this discussion. I'm not sure if everybody, all the constituents got involved and they changed the name to West Side. I think if it has merit, full and thoughtful discussion to prioritize making every student feel comfortable, is welcome and supported by the teachers, the administrators, and all the constituents, that they all have a voice going forward. There's a lot of things that are going on. You know, I had a friend of mine whose mother was really a second generation from the Civil War, but she would yell at me for saying it's a Civil War. She's always considered it a war between the states. So I think everybody should be heard. I don't have any preference to keep it or not, but I think the people are entitled, all parties that have an impact on the high school get to vote. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And before we pivot to the next question, I actually had a follow-up come in for both of you, really just curious as to if you had to vote on the issue of renaming, what your vote would be.
I'll go for, I think I'm not the person that's going to make the decision. The decision is going to be made by the parents that are there, the alumni, and administrators, and making it work. And one other thing, I appreciate JPEF to engage the process to this extent. You're collecting money. If the school is name changed, there's money to make it happen. And so I am not going to make that determination. Other people are.
Lori? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. The recommendation will come from the superintendent to the board regarding those name changes. And what I will do is the same thing I did when we did school closings. Because none of these schools are in my district specifically, I will follow the lead of the school board member and the recommendation of the superintendent regarding name changes. But I anticipate a hearty engagement with the community on these, because we're up to about 6 or 7 schools now, because 2 additional schools were added recently.
Thank you both so much.
All right, shifting gears now, we're going to talk about another important policy issue. Your perspectives on school choice and the use of public funding for charter schools and private schools through vouchers. How should the district and the school board provide support and accountability to all schools receiving public funds, including charter and private schools? And let's begin with Matt.
You know, I think this is a great question. I think it all boils down to the parents. I think the parents and the youth deserve choices. They should be the determining factor of where they should go to school. I would reference STEM and make sure that all these students have an opportunity to expand their horizon and learn skills for the future and the quality of life that they should be looking after. The career readiness, that anybody, as the parents know what's best for the child, make the parent's choice. And if that money follows the child, I'm all in favor of it. They need to include fine and performing arts, student expression and interest. Students learn best when they're able to be guided by their educational journey and finding something they love to do. And we need to allow every student that opportunity wherever they go. Thank you.
And Lori.
So just a real quick history. Jacksonville is a school district of choice because that was to settle that was a result of a court mandate regarding desegregation. So that's how we first got charter schools. And I think that's important to know. Vouchers were something that came through the state, and then just in charter schools or public schools, and they have some different guidelines than traditional schools. What I will say is that over the past 3 years, the state representatives have made some steps, not as big as many people want, but has made some steps to require greater accountability for charter schools receiving dollars for students and private schools receiving voucher dollars. One of the things that people want is accountability. So when you receive a voucher and you go to a school, does the school deliver on what you got that voucher for? I mean, then people feel like that's a fair question to ask. So the state of Florida is also a state of choice. I got a call today from a parent.
Sorry, I know these minutes go by so quickly, and these are such complex issues. Well, the next question does come to us from our partners at the Duval County Council of PTAs. And sometimes candidates who run for school board have limited hands-on experience in schools, whether it's as a parent, volunteer teacher, or in another capacity. Would love to hear each of you share specifically about the schools in DCPS that you've worked with or in, and what role you were in, what impact you made, and how you were affected by that experience. And Lori, we'll start with you for this one.
Okay, I'm going to get it done within a minute. I have 4 children. My oldest son began kindergarten in 1995, and my youngest graduated in 2018. So that's a long time of consecutive experience as a parent in our schools. I was engaged as a parent in PTA and SAC, but what I'll share with you is my daughter, who was involved in the arts. I was on the inaugural committee for Strings on the River, where we brought in an expert in the field of music. We brought students together. They ended up playing in Jacoby Hall and having an experience of being with a professional and seeing what it would be like to be a professional musician. What I have found through my experience is that we have a lot of good things happening in Duval County, and that's really what sparked my interest in getting engaged and serving entering the race in 2016, was that I believe we're doing a lot of things right. We've got room to improve.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Matt, your connection to our schools and the impact you've made and how you've been affected by your experiences.
All my life, I've been a coach and mentor to many people. I was a swim coach, and I took that, and I not only did that when I was in college, but when as we're working, I thought the children not only needed education in the schools, but I also volunteered as a coach at YMCA and Mandarin, and I also was a volunteer coach at the JCA off of District 5. This is very important because you learn about the children. And one of the things about children is they want to learn. No matter what you're offering, find something they like. I know it sounds terrible. I mean, it sounds great. Not only did I tutor in the South Side, but in inner city school, I went up there and taught, encouraged reading and math. And you know what? I started a golf program at an inner city school. And you know what? They loved it because it was something new and they totally enjoyed it. And that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Okay, this question is from the NAACP Jacksonville branch, one of JPEF's partner organizations. What does community engagement mean to you? Why is it important, and how would you achieve it as a board member for your district? Please share what types of activities you'll implement to keep your constituents knowledgeable of DCPS policies, programs, and goals, starting with Matt.
I guess I can answer it almost the same way. As a board member, I had town hall meetings, I had community meetings, I had neighborhood meetings, I had church meetings. All these things are important to reach out to all the constituents you're dealing with, not just in District 7, School Board District 7, but throughout Jacksonville. Quality education is an entitlement, in a sense, of every student, every parent in this area. So I think that one of the things that we should do is be more involved in what's going on. Not only did I do the tutoring, but almost every high school and every elementary school, contacted all of them from 5th grade up to see if they wanted to talk and meet an elected official. A lot of them took me up on it. So how many actual students have ever met an elected official? Very few. We need to do more engagement. Thank you very much.
And now Lori.
Lori, you're on mute.
All right. So being on the school board, you represent not only your district, which is a community you want to engage, but you represent children throughout the district. So you've got to engage in the greater community as well. So specifically to my district, I have 2 chat with the superintendents every year that I've done since I've been on the school board. I hold 4 community meetings, and I also have specific meetings at schools for specific topics as needed. If you expand that, what's really, I think, significant too is when other board members attend a community meeting outside of their district, because that makes an impression with other constituents, because even though you may not be elected for that district, you are still making decisions that impact their district. You know, social media, I think, is a very engaging thing today, and I've upped my game on social media. I'm amazed at how many people will reach out through Twitter, through Facebook Messenger, through Facebook pages and that kind of stuff. I think you just have to use every tool in your toolbox. And bottom line is.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to let you guys know, don't worry about if there's a delay with the mute. We're not starting the timer until you guys actually start talking. So don't worry. We'll now turn to another really important topic in education, our teachers. Of course, research shows that teachers are the #1 most important factor in schools when it comes to student learning. Data shows, unfortunately, that fewer young people are pursuing education careers, and that approximately 50% of teachers leave Duval County Public Schools within the first 5 years. We also know that a diverse teaching force can improve student outcomes, and our teaching force isn't as diverse as our student body here in Duval County. What can DCPS do to recruit and retain a high quality and diverse teaching force? Lori, we'll start with you for this one.
Okay. I would start to say that my daughter is an education major, and this, turnaround time with new teachers is not unique to Duval County. This is something that is significant throughout the district. Dr. Green is well aware of the fact that we need to improve diversity in our workforce. About 2 or 3 years ago, we came up with a program, and I'm going to forget the name of it now. I want to say it's Ready, Set, Teach, but I don't think that's the right name of it, where we recruit people within Duval County who may be looking for a second career. And this engagement has been a great way to enlist people who've wanted to teach and help them get on the path to be a teacher. The other thing we did too is we've have some partnerships where we're actually working with bringing teachers from overseas, specifically like, if you've got a Chinese teacher who may be from China. And so we're trying a variety of options to recruit people and to build diversity.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Matt, what do you think DCPS can do to recruit and retain a high quality and diverse teaching force?
I'm going to go to a sports analogy. Everybody wants to be on a winning team. And when you're a winning team, you'll have plenty of teachers coming to your way. I think that one of the things we need to make sure that the teachers have the safety. They need to get paid more. DeSantis is working on, has done something like that. And we need to make sure that they have the support from the administration. These are the keys. And the reason why I know this, because I was on the Bishop Kenny Catholic School Board for 24 years. I was chairman, finance director. I did it all. And one of the things we found was that the teachers would leave Duval County to come to a parochial school, and they made less, their benefits were less, but they loved teaching. They loved children, and they knew that they would get this support from the administration, and there was no problem with safety. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about the 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Survey. It showed that Duval County students are experiencing bullying, considering or attempting suicide, and doing drugs higher than the state averages. How would you prioritize budget dollars for programs for mental health for students, especially in our post-COVID time? And we'll start with Matt.
Clearly, we need to engage this. And I think everybody, not just students, but parents, grandparents, these last 3 months of being locked down has given everybody a certain anxiety. We need to have them release it. And the way they need to release it is through counseling. They need to be able to take a deep breath and let it go, because we are impacting these children and we're clustering them. We tell them they can't do this, they can't do that. We have lots of rules, and now we've piled on additional rules going forward. Mental health, we need to do that. I'm not going to take any money away from the police, but clearly there is money in the school system and in the city of Jacksonville. We work together, and that's one of the things that has been missing. We can't work as a silo as school board. Neither can City Hall. You work together to make it happen. Thank you.
All right, Lori Hershey, how would you prioritize budget dollars for mental health, behavioral health for students?
So a couple of years ago, after the Parkland shooting, one of the things the state legislators did was they passed lots of legislation, one of which includes specific bill for mental health. The neat thing about this is that it offers wraparound services and makes it accessible to all students and not just students in a specific area or a specific type of school. Well, the great thing about this program is that as people enroll and engage, this will continue to grow. The other thing is that our schools reflect our community. And we have to be well aware of the fact, I worked at the Children's Commission, and so many times when we have issues at school, we've never had a student with a weapon at school who meant to cause harm. It was always to protect oneself from outside of the school. So we do need to continue to work together as a community. We made some efforts with that a few years ago, and I would like, if I don't want to run out of time, I can't see the little.
Awesome, thank you so much. Well, now we want to talk about the half penny for public schools and for school facilities that voters will decide on during the general election on November the 3rd. What's your position on the half penny for schools? If you are opposed, what do you propose instead to solve our substantial facilities challenges? Lori, we'll start with you.
So we started to try to tackle that last year. And really, it got to be, what does shall mean? And Jacksonville said shall means may, so we got into that big debate. And the ask of the school board last summer was to let voters decide. When Dr. Green brought this to me as a lifelong resident of Jacksonville, I felt like we needed to make a decision as a community. So many people point to St. Johns County and other counties, but they have chosen to invest in our schools, and we need to do the same thing. There have been opportunities, for example, the city council has the ability to share some dollars from JEA with the schools. That has never been done. But I think I mentioned it earlier that one of the great things about this is that we did a facilities index report, which identified the specific needs at every single school. And the priority is based upon the results of that facilities index report. And every school in the district will be touched.
Thank you, Lori. Matt, what's your position on the half penny for public schools?
I'm indifferent, and I'll tell you why. Right now, the school board gets $108 million through a mill and a half of every property owner in Duval County. It's $108 million a year. And the last I looked, and I have it reasonably current, I don't have it as of this day, but I looked at it, and they're not spending all of that $108 million in repair and maintenance, and that's how exclusively it has to be spent. There was a transfer about about $25,000 from that fund to the general fund. Ms. Hershey is correct. When JEA got to be a contribution to the city, they took away the right, the ad valorem right that they were paying to the school board, but that goes back 30 years, okay? So I would say two things. Number one is that if they get that half cent, do you realize over the next 15 years, there's $3 billion actually for schools and maintenance going forward? Thank you.
So we'll have to ask the follow-up, which is the second part of that question. What do you propose if the half penny wasn't secured instead to solve our substantial facilities problem?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, the school board had a chance to allocate some of that money to the charter schools when they had a chance to vote on it. And two things happened. We lost home rule because they didn't pass it. And then the group went over to Tallahassee and they forced, basically, if you get a half cent, now charter schools are going to get a proportional share of that going forward. And you know what the idea charter school is going to do? They're going to take that money and they're going to build schools in the Northwest quadrant. Why aren't we doing that? What we should be doing is looking at what the future of the school system is going to be, if it's going to be brick and mortar or whatever. This is a much bigger conversation. And one other thing, since last year, none of those priorities have changed and the world has changed. And we need to look at what their needs are, not now, but in the future. Thank you.
Back to Melissa.
And Lori, we'll close with you on that follow-up question that Rachel asked.
Could you say it again? I'm trying to.
Sure. Should the half penny pass? Am I on the right question, Rachel, this final question? Or are we starting new with this final question?
It's the final question.
So one about, should the half penny sales tax pass? What's the
Yeah.
approach on that? So
I guess we'll just move forward. Should the half penny pass, what is your approach on how schools should be prioritized within the master plan to receive upgrades first within your district by age, neighborhood, grade? Lori, why don't you start that one?
So that is done, well, the index report tells us what schools need to be done. So specific in District 7, Mandarin High School has portables that need to be moved and a new wing built there. Loretto Elementary is 76, 77 years old. It is a sprawling campus behind the charming, quaint schoolhouse. The community has been begging for a K-8 in the Nocatee area. We need to have major renovations that need to be done at both Greenland Pines and Crown Point Elementary. And none of those things are going to get done if the half penny sales tax doesn't pass. What I will tell you is the school board did take a bold step, and we're consolidating about 47 schools into about 23 or 25 schools. And those consolidations will take place and move forward. Those mergers will happen whether or not the half penny sales tax passes.
All right, and Matt.
Wow, I think we have about 170 schools. And by the way, I think what we should do is prioritize every school. And if they just so happens they fall in District 7, I think that's good. But we have 170 schools. Let's figure out the schools that are going to be consolidated and not worry about them. But wherever the schools priority are, that's what district gets the money. Yes, there's portables at Mandarin High, and potentially there could be a high school down at Nocatee. But right now, the priority that not to make sure that all the school board members vote for it, because this is how things get voted on previously and almost everything going on in City Hall. We're going to give everybody a piece of the pie. Well, sometimes everybody can't get a piece of the pie. Sometimes they get more and we get less. And in this case, we should prioritize the 170 and they get it first, and we've worked down the list. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Those are all of the questions that we predetermined before beginning the event tonight. We also have had some really great questions coming to us from the audience, and we are excited now to turn to those questions. This first question comes to us from someone tuning in tonight from Facebook, And this question inquires about how you will ensure that students on IEPs and in CSS programs needs are met during this pandemic. There's a huge opportunity for them to fall through the cracks, especially if they are choosing virtual school. For this question, we'll start with you, Matt.
I think it's an excellent question. I think we had a lot of fall off that people weren't doing the visual. And what we need to do is find out, why aren't they doing this? Or why are they falling through the cracks? This takes a lot of work. It's not that these teachers should sit back, but the administration should be out there figuring out why they're not participating and getting the work done. And that might mean knocking on their doors, finding out, teaching the skills to get online, to make sure that they have all the access and understanding to go forward. I'm 67 years old. I have sometimes figured out how to do this, and I need younger people to help me. That's why I'm against the union saying that you have to have 3 years experience before you do online. Everybody gets to do it. Everybody has skills. We need to find out where they are and make sure that they are connected and get the education they need and the skills to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Same question. How will you ensure that students on IEPs and in CSS programs, that their needs are met during this pandemic?
You know, that's a really good question. And it's well, one of the most difficult things during the spring was meeting the needs and servicing students with IEPs. And, you know, we have some schools that, while they're places of learning, they're almost places of care as well. And so it's more hands-on and even manipulative with some students, with some of the therapy that takes place. I was just talking with Dr. Green about that and discussing with her, what is her plan for addressing that, specifically if any part of it has to be online, because it's very difficult to be online and instruct somebody to do, you know, to do something, especially if it's manipulative with somebody. So what I will tell you is that we don't have that question worked out yet, but I did speak with the superintendent today, and I know that she is working on a plan to address that, because it's unique. It's a very unique.
Thank you, Lori. Back to you, Melissa.
Okay, stand by. Sorry, I clicked myself off there. This question comes from Zoom. How do we ensure that the high quality teachers are dispersed throughout all districts, not just in more affluent communities? Why don't we start with Matt on that one?
You know, I don't know how you, do we, every year we should have the teachers graded. And I don't know how this question, I think every student, I understand the question. I clearly do, but disperse of teachers throughout, I think that teachers have a special skill. We just need to find what that skill is. And I don't know if the administration is doing that now. And if they're doing it, it's a bad idea. I think every student should have an opportunity to have the best teachers. And by the way, that means paying the teachers more, paying the good teachers more, and getting rid of the ones that aren't performing. So you're basically saying that all teachers aren't alike. That's true. Some are better than others. Every business looks at who's not performing, get rid of those, and make sure that all the teachers are good teachers to equitable education. Thank you.
Okay, Lori.
Would you read that question again for me?
Sure. Give me 1 second. It reads from Zoom, how do we ensure that the high quality teachers are dispersed throughout all parts of the school district, not just in affluent communities?
Well, I think it's probably a misconception to think that only high quality teachers teach in a specific demographic in the district. One may remember that just a few years ago, we were providing incentives to get teachers to go teach in Title I schools. So you had an exit from some of our neighborhood schools to get people in the urban core because we were working really hard to move those schools and student achievement. One of the things that we talked about at a recent board workshop, it's probably been a couple of years ago, is the fact that teachers with experience are typically the teachers that are the most effective. And we had a pendulum swing a few years ago where we were bringing in a lot of Teach for America teachers. And so it's really been an effort by Dr. Green to mentor teachers and to develop a deeper bench and to take the skill set of the more experienced teachers and have them work and train and mentor younger teachers.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. So this next question is coming to us from Facebook. If you had to eliminate funds from a budget, which area or line item would you cut first? So from the district's budget, if you had to cut something, what would you cut first? For this one, we will start with you, Lori.
Oh, well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What I will tell you is that our largest budget is transportation. But some people may remember a few years ago when that board decided to cut magnet transportation and the fallout that happened from that. What happens with so many areas in the budget is that there's always an argument not to do it. Transportation, like I said, is our biggest area, and St. Johns County does not provide transportation for all of their choice options. And that would be a way to scale back. It's very difficult to cut magnet, but if you're asking me what's the biggest one that you can get the most out of, it would be transportation, but that's a bear to tackle is what I can say, but that's the one I think that we should look at the first is our transportation budget.
Thank you, Lori. Matt, if you had to eliminate funds from the budget, what area or line would you cut first?
Well, first of all, if you had neighborhood schools, you wouldn't have to worry about busing. This is my emphasis. We need neighborhood schools in areas that require them and making sure that they can walk to school. The transportation should not be one. It is a huge budget. When I was elected 9 years ago, I asked the question, how much money are you spending on fuel at that time? $40 million a year. However, there's many things in the budget can be saved. And I'll tell you two of them. When I was on the city council, I spearheaded the city council and the city hall to go to self-insured health. Do you realize we saved $20 million the first year, and we subsequently have saved $20 million every year? Not only that, it allows us to let the employees and retirees to go on and save money on their deductible and their copay. That's a great savings.
All right, next question comes to us from Facebook. From Zoom. I'm proud that the Mandarin schools are doing well, but what about how students are doing in other districts? We are interrelated as a society. What happens to one of us impacts all of us. How can we reach out across the aisle and support all of our schools, especially those schools that are not doing well? And let's start with Lori.
So, I want to share a story with that because people might not remember. It was about a year or two ago when a stray bullet pierced the window of a kindergarten classroom at St. Clair Evans. And that school was a D school. They ended up being, it was a D school, and they ended up moving 2 letter grades. I mean, that bullet pierced that window just days before state testing started. So I would argue that we know how to make that change, and principal leadership is a very, very big part of that. And there has been a lot of emphasis on principal leadership in our schools. And I think that as we strengthen our principal leadership in schools, that we will see all of our schools rise up as well. Research proves that principal leadership is the driving force for student achievement, for motivation, for teacher instruction, and it influences culture. So that to me is the biggest thing, is that we need to
All right, and Matt, your answer to that question.
You want to just repeat the question? I got lost up
Sure.
in the answer. I'm apologizing.
Sure. She or he says, I'm proud that Mandarin schools are doing well, but what about students in other districts? We are all connected. How can we reach out and support all of the schools, especially ones not doing well?
I think that's the heart of the matter. Why isn't all the schools doing well? I saw that we now have 20 or 30 principals going to different locations. I think basically, I think we should keep principals where they are there because they build up rapport with the neighborhoods. And I'm a firm believer in neighborhoods. There shouldn't be a section of Duval County that does not have great education. However, in my business, as I mentioned earlier, I meet people from all over the country, over the world, that move here for jobs, and they avoid Duval County. And when I talked to the previous school board members, I said they're moving to St. Johns County. Their answer is we have great schools in Mandarin. They don't recognize that. They look at overall what impact Duval County has. This is destroying, in a sense, Duval County. We need to make Duval County competitive in all areas so they not only work here, but live here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. So this next question is also coming to us tonight from someone tuning in via Zoom. Quality education requires the marshaling of resources in support of the needs of students who are at risk. Therefore, we need to make creative alliances with leaders in the Jacksonville community. Who are the leaders who the school district should reach out to? And how important are the nonprofits to DCPS? Matt, we'll start with you on this one.
My fingers are too fat, I think. First of all, we have the Civic Council. These are the leaders of business, the biggest businesses in town, and we should be engaged in that. We also should reach out to Nina Waters, the endowment, and there's plenty of people. First of all, in my 8 years as a city councilman, I was able to meet most of these people. They love Jacksonville. They have their business here. They want to help. We just need to go and talk to them. That doesn't mean calling them up twice a year. That means going to have coffee with them. It means talking to everybody around them, the lieutenants. Tell them what the school system needs. Clearly, some companies have done it. J&J is doing it. Jacksport is doing it. And there's other companies that are doing it. They want quality, skilled workers. Otherwise, why would they come here? We need to get all of them involved. And it doesn't take one call. It means constant engagement with leaders of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori, your thoughts on how we can make creative alliances with leaders in the Jacksonville community, who those leaders are that the district should be reaching out to, and how important the nonprofits are?
Nonprofit support and engagement is critical, and they are what provide so many services, specifically wraparound services and support services for our students. I think that we as a district are reaching out to build bridges. For example, just 3 years ago, when it came to the I think it's construction career days, or sometimes I say that backwards, we only had maybe 6 schools participate. We were able to double that and then triple that engagement with students. In fact, just last year, we had close to about 13 schools participate in that, where students can go and get exposure to jobs and career opportunities. I worked to facilitate the relationship with Jacksport, and that is going to be an exciting relationship because we need to continue.
Rachel, can I just add one thing, please? Yes or no? I can't hear you.
Okay. Do you want me to go on to the next question?
Can I just, do you mind if I just add one thing? One of the areas in which we need more engagement, and it came up in the interview with Northeast Florida Builders Association, every other county are engaging Northeast Florida Builders Association except Duval County. They need builders. Craftsman, and Duval County School System has not engaged Northeast Florida Builders Association in this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura, we have to be equitable, so I'll let you add as well.
I would counter that there's a specific program, I think, with, it might be with electrical or engineering or something, that the builders have a very, very strong program in Clay County. They've been so focused in Clay County on that when Duval County reached out to them, we didn't get anywhere. So it's not for lack of effort. And the Duval County has made that effort, but the focus and priority at the time was on Clay County.
Thank you. Melissa, back to you. Sorry, I was on mute when
Oh,
you go.
sure. Here's one for you from Facebook. The way people communicate has changed. What is your strategy to ensure key stakeholders, teachers, students, parents, are informed and are not left out of important conversations? And we'll start with Matt.
Wow, that's great. I think everything is on the table. I'm not as good with some of these things, but when I was on the city council, emails was the best way to get a hold of me because I can read every one of them and get back to them, and that was great. Phone call, Twitter, Facebook, all these things are available, but interesting enough, there's part of the population that doesn't have access to it and they don't know how to use it. So these are the people that we really need to engage. And you know what that means? That means going back to community centers, going to the community centers, not sitting back and waiting for them to come to us, going to the community centers, going to the food banks, going to wherever they are to listen to what their problems are. Because sometimes they do not have the availability to contact somebody like Ms. Hershey or any of the school board members or me, and you need to go to them. Thank you.
And Lori, how do you think you should be reaching people now that the way they communicate has changed?
Well, I have only recently become good at social media. That is something, and I really stepped up that game when COVID-19 hit. Because prior to that, you can meet people and meet them for tea or have lunch with people. And it was kind of more of an old-fashioned way. But I found by stepping up my social media game that I am constantly, I'm not just getting emails and phone calls and text messages. I've got to check messages in all these other places. And I found that social engagement for this particular season has been one of the best ways to engage the community.
Thank you both so much. This next question actually was raised by viewers tuning in both from Facebook and Zoom. The question is, do you have children? Where did you send your kids to school? For this one, we'll start with you, Matt.
I am blessed that my daughter got into La Villa. She's a visual artist. She had a talent that clearly did not get from dad because I was a stick man. But she went from La Villa to Douglas Anderson, and what I recognized was the gifts that these children have. And by the way, every child has a gift. We need to expand the arts in all the schools because two things happen when you go to La Villa or Douglas Anderson. They have to do time management. They not only have to know the basics that you have to do, history, math, all that stuff, but they have that other criteria, which is their skill. And time management was so important. And I can't tell you what a joy it was to go to the extravaganza. Jackie Cornelius is unbelievable. Those children are unbelievable. We need to make sure that every child has a chance to find out what their talent is, either in arts or anything else that's out there so they can enjoy a quality of life.
Thank you. Lori, your kids and where they went to school?
So I have 4 children, and I have to tell you that my family has benefited from school choice. And I would just remind everyone that we are a city of choice because of it was a legal court order mandate that forced us to be a district of choice. I have a daughter that went to La Villa as well as Douglas Anderson. I have a son that graduated from Paxson. I have another son that graduated from our neighborhood school. My youngest daughter, it took her a little while to get through high school. We did some online classes as well, school, and she did graduate from a charter school. So it was important to me as a mom to be able to find the right fit for my student.
All right, here's another question for you both, coming in from people watching. This is an emailed question. I would like to know each candidate's political affiliation and also if their loyalty to party or party ideals will outweigh the desires of the parents whose children you're servicing. Let's start with Matt.
I have actually been a Republican all my life, and as a city council person or as a school board member, your interest is only for the child and the parents. That's it. When I was on the city council, it was for the benefit of Mandarin and all the citizens of Jacksonville. I had many people that would walk up to me and say, I disagree with you on that, but I listened to them. And that's what we need. Elected officials need to be more out in the community. Now, it's very different during this pandemic, but I believe that there's ways to do this going forward. And clearly, my experience is you're not doing it for the party. I don't think I ever went to an RNC meeting in my 8 years of being on the council. That's not where I belong. I belong to the citizens of Jacksonville and the people not only voted for me, but everybody. And I represented 76,000 people. I represented all of them. Thank you.
And Lori.
So what I would like to remind people is this is a nonpartisan race. You asked the question, and I will tell you that I'm a Republican, but I think one of the reasons kind of like judges are nonpartisan races is so that people are voting based upon record. And what I will say is I have served as your school board member for the past 3.5 years, coming up on 4 years, and I will just say I will let my record speak for itself.
Thank you both so much. This question comes to us from Zoom. What is the one thing you would like to accomplish during your term should you be elected? For this one, we'll start with you, Lori.
Well, coming up, you know, I really want our district to be an A district. We are so close, and I think we would have really landed that this year. I would like to see an expansion of career technical education. I've had a conversation with the superintendent, and we've had a brief conversation with the board prior to COVID, that we need to start looking at where things that are in demand in choice through career technical education as well as courses offered, and then replicate that throughout the district. The final thing I would like to accomplish is I would love to see the board tackle the question of what is the future location of the district office, and I would love for us to begin to take steps to move the district office off the river.
Thank you. Matt, the one thing you'd like to accomplish should you be elected?
I think transparency, making sure the money's being spent well. Understand that that budget's $1.7 billion. It's $150 million a month. And it's about $5 million a day. Clearly there's waste and we need to be more efficient. But the most important thing is neighborhood schools. I want to build schools in the Northwest. I want them to be able to walk to school. In fact, why don't we have a huge campus that you go, and this campus includes K through 12. You have the elementary school, you have middle school, and you have high school. So all those parents will there. And you know what? If it's a great school, great teachers, they will flock to this area. And you know what? I got the idea from the ideal charter schools, because that's what they're going to do. And if they see it, I see the same thing. I don't want these children to be bused all over Kingdom Come. I don't want to waste gas money to move them from one place to another. I want them to stay home, be close to their families so they can go to after school activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Back to you, Melissa.
Okay, I will, can you find out from her and call me back?
Do we have more questions coming in from people who have Zoomed on? I don't see any more, Rachel, but you may see some that I don't.
Yes, we'll go to this next question, which is coming to us from Zoom. How do you plan to work with local and state elected officials to ensure what's best for students takes priority over politics? And for this one, we will turn to Matt to start.
One of the great things on being on city council, I reached out not only to the business community, everybody that wanted to talk to me, but engage the state representatives, both the representatives and the Senate representatives, not once a year, twice a year, going to Tallahassee. What this means is you have a standard time in which you give them a call. You engage them. You contact the governor's office. You do all these things. I did it on city council. You make sure that when you call, you're not bothering them. When you call, it's important. And you don't do it once a year. You don't do it twice a year. This is an ongoing thing that we need to engage them in the process to make sure they understand what Duval County needs. And we should not allow them to tell Duval County what to do. Home rule is very important to me. I was a great advocate. I got awards for being home rule. We need to do it, but we still need their engagement and we need their money. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Lori. The question again was, how do you plan to work with local and state elected officials to ensure what's best for students takes priority over politics?
Well, I tell you, it boils, it's relationship, relationship, relationship. I am very pleased to have a strong relationship with every member of the Duval delegation, and having been to Tallahassee, meeting other state representatives as well, to whom I can reach out to regarding educational issues. And so I think that it's just that relationship that gives us access, because then when you get the cell phone numbers in your car and in your phone, and you can text and you can call and you develop that relationship, I have found that it's really through the casual conversations and the questions that you ask sometimes where change happens the most.
All right, and one more question from the public. How can you ensure the students go back to school safely? Let's start with you, Matt.
I think this goes back to opening up the schools. And I'm going to have the parents make sure that every school that they go to is safe. We need to spend money on safety, not only just safe environment to have a resource person or somebody there, but we also need to make sure that the equipment is clean, the environment is clean, everybody's basically, that the administrators have masks on. I don't want this to go any further. By the way, there are a lot more positives, but the actual numbers, that has a lot to do with the protesting, things like this. I'm a great advocate of putting the responsibility not to anybody but the parents or guardian of the children. And that means a safe environment. If the parents think it's safe and we provide that safe and we make sure that it is done, then they can send their child to school if they want to. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank
Lori.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Lori, go ahead.
Would you just say that that question was about opening schools safely? Is that it in a nutshell?
Yes, yes. How can they be sent back safely?
Well, and I think that that's one of the things that you saw in deliberation with the board today was the decision to delay the opening of the school so that teachers could have the professional development that they need for online instruction. And it also gives us an extra time to continue to deep clean schools so when students go back, our schools are clean. Listen, we have worked really, really hard on school safety, specifically after Parkland. Lots of legislation came out. The schools have fences around them now. There's one entry. You've got to be hit a buzzer to get in the door. There's all kind. We've upgraded our safety so much. Physically now, it's more about health safety as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much. Impressively, I think that brings us through as many, if not even more questions as we've asked on some of the other forums this week. So really appreciate you all carefully answering those questions that have come to us through the audience. We now want to give each of you 2 minutes to make your closing remarks. And we will again start and do this in alphabetical order. So we'll start with you, Lori.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to, again, we talked about ways to engage with the public, and this is yet another venue to do that. What I would like to say to people is that I'm running to make a difference. I'm not running just to hold office. I don't have a desire to be a career politician, but I do have a desire to move education forward in Duval County. And I strongly believe that over the past 4 years, we have seen Duval County head in the right direction. I am so proud of the school board that we have now and every member on it because we've dared to tackle some of the tough issues that other boards have said, you know, we didn't want to touch it. We knew it needed to be discussed. And so I believe that I have a proven track record of being able to tackle the tough issues, to stand up to special interest and to stand up for students. And I'm asking you today for your vote on August 18th.
Thank you, Lori. Matt, your closing?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I think that we should be, as a board, provide equitable, challenging issues for each student to grow, learn a skill, and be successful in life. I have a great passion. You can hear that in my voice. I think we need more passion and look at the data to actually say, are we really graduating what we're saying we're graduating? I'm not sure of that, because what I understand is that they take tests at the 10th grade, and if they don't pass it, they have opportunities to take a lesser challenging test going forward. And then they get a graduating thing. In fact, in 2016, a board member who's running now basically said in about 4 years, when it's fully implemented, the actual graduation rate will go down 10% overall and 16% in the Black community. This is unacceptable. I think that looking at the $1.7 billion budget, I think it's deplorable that we aren't auditing that all the time. And what amazes me is that apparently there's money out there. The school board, the administration spent $300,000 on masks and didn't tell the board about it. They debated for an hour and a half, and then the board and the administration finally said, we already bought them, just do an acclamation. These are things that need to be hard asking questions. As a businessman for 29 years, basically having my own businesses for 50 years, you have to ask the hard questions. That the citizens are given the school board $1.7 billion to make sure it's spent well, and that means that every child gets a quality education, and no matter where they go to school, and make sure the teachers are paid well and get the opportunity and support from the administration. And thank you very much, and have a great evening, and thanks for the invite.
Thank you very much. On, hold on, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I have all the notes here. Oh, okay. So based on our ground rules, since Matt's comments sort of address the graduation rate, and Lori is on the board, we'll give you a few minutes, or 30 seconds, excuse me, is the time allotted for rebuttal.
So one thing I would like to point out is that the masks were purchased by Dr. Green. She had the authority to purchase those under the emergency orders that the board assigned to her back when COVID started, and I think it was probably in March sometime. It might have been at the April board meeting. I don't remember which one. So she had the authority to do that. The other thing is those masks are paid for out of the CARES Act, which are federal dollars, and they're reimbursable to the district. The test that he is referring to, oh, time's running out. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate both of you. And just on behalf of the Jacksonville Public Education Fund, I just want to sincerely thank both Lori Hershey and Matt Schellenberg for participating in this important community forum tonight. I also want to make sure everyone knows that there is a third candidate in this race, John Turner, who declined to participate tonight. I want to thank Melissa Ross of WJCT for co-moderating with me tonight. It has been a pleasure. Melissa, would you like to offer or provide any closing remarks?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Thanks to the candidates, and thanks to everyone who watched and submitted questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Please do share this broadcast with others you know. It's very important that our community be informed of this school board election cycle. A recording is available right now on our Facebook page at facebook.com/JaxPef. And you can also learn much more about the candidates at jaxpef.org DCPS.org/school board. To all of the attendees who took the time to log on tonight, I do want to remind you of the importance of voting during this election. Kids cannot vote, but you can, and our city's children are counting on you, the adults, to elect one of these great candidates to represent them at DCPS. Early voting is August the 3rd through the 16th, and the primary election is August the 18th. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Have a great night.